going to be a series for this fictive country we are talking about, but it is also going to travel. But before we start to talk about how we get it in place, I would like to ask you, who has final cut here? The scriptwriter, who invented these characters, who knows them, who have put them in this world? The director, who is going to unfold them, to direct them, to make them live? Or the producer, who is in charge of the success and the budget, and who have the final cut when we shall decide for the cast?
En France, c'est très simple, c'est le producteur qui propose et c'est la chaîne qui dispose.
Est-ce que vous pouvez détailler un peu cette affirmation lapidaire?
Eh bien, c'est-à-dire que dans la pratique, les chaînes demandent aux producteurs de venir avec une liste de comédiens, un metteur en scène ou plusieurs, mais finalement c'est la chaîne qui va décider.
The writer-producer hires a casting associate to bring in lots of people to cast, and they read the scenes with the director there to give some direction, and you go in and typically choose several people you're interested in, and it's called testing. And you test the actors for the network, and you bring them into the network, and you have to be very careful because if you have to kind of strategize, because if you bring in two people you don't like and one person you do like, because you want to get your way and get the person you do like, they may like the person you don't like, and then you'll have to figure out what to do.
Est-ce que le scénariste prend part au choix des acteurs qui vont incarner les rôles qu'il a écrits?
Non, et tant mieux.
It shouldn't be the director, it shouldn't be the writer, shouldn't be the writer or the director, it should be the producer. And that would usually be a separate person altogether in England.
At the end, the broadcaster has the last word.
The network has a very different, and I can only speak, obviously I'm only speaking for the United States, the network has a different agenda than we do. The network will make suggestions to us that are outlandish suggestions about who to bring on as cast members, people from Saturday Night Live who are wonderful comedians but couldn't act dramatically if you paid them double.
In the English-Canadian reality, it would be very unusual for a series to be built around a star. If the series is a success, the actor becomes a star, the lead actor becomes a star. But there's a whole pragmatic level to this casting discussion which speaks to the money and speaks to the financing, both from the point of view of who are your partners, but also in our reality, there's always a gap in the financing, which is related to the potential for foreign sales.
Est-ce qu'il n'y a donc pas un désavantage sur le plan strictement dramatique à prendre un acteur très connu qui attire tout le regard et à prendre d'autres acteurs qui, eux, ne vont pas en imposer autant, et deuxièmement, à introduire une distinction très importante dans les salaires qui vont être donnés aux acteurs d'emblée.
Different sitcoms have proven that pretty much that stars don't help, like Bette Midler, Gina Davis recently have been fiascos. It's kind of a mixed bag on dramas. The dramas, the top dramas again, CSI, ER, Law and Order, some of the actors were known in movies, but they're no big stars. ER made stars, Law and Order has made stars. Mark Helgenberg and William Peterson both did some movies and had been in TV before, but they weren't big stars, certainly not movie stars. So I think in television, the networks are tantalized by big stars, and it's rare that it pans out. For whatever reason, an audience likes them in movies. They tend not to like them. They tend to not like them in their homes on a free basis. Maybe there's been tons written about that. Like if and a lot of movie stars don't want to do TV because they'd rather the audience buy them than get them for free.
The head of the unit be German, and the forensic specialist be French, and he who's a specialist in financing and economy, he could be Italian, and the guy who, and so on and so on. I mean, it's European stories. It's Europol. They could have a European unit. Or am I heading straight towards problems?
Pour moi, le casting doit
Très
être
bonne
déterminé
question.
en fonction de la langue.
En babylonien, par
Je sais pas.
exemple.
Non mais en quelle langue ça peut... il me semble que c'est pas un gros problème. Dans le cas de la télévision, on peut très bien concevoir que ce soit tourné à chaque fois, par exemple dans une langue internationale qui serait l'anglais, et que chaque pays, puisque de toute façon tous les pays, presque tous les pays doublent leurs séries, enfin beaucoup de pays doublent leurs séries, on pourrait très bien imaginer qu'ensuite ce soit sous-titré, soit doublé dans la langue du pays. Ça me paraît pas être un gros problème, si c'est l'anglais, oui.
Je vous entends bien, mais si vous voulez, Monsieur Alexandre, que la télévision suisse romande participe à votre projet, nous, on aimerait bien que les comédiens romans tournent dans cette série. Simplement, les comédiens emblématiques, ceux qui ont une notoriété dans le pays, ne parlent pas l'anglais. Évidemment, il y a un autre problème aussi pour nous, télévision suisse romande, parce qu'on a un bassin de population d'1,5 million de personnes. C'est que s'il y a deux solutions, en soit on achètera votre série si c'est un succès, on la payera, disons, 2 000 € l'heure. Mais si vous souhaitez une coproduction avec nous, on ira très exigeant. On exigera 2 ou 3 rôles principaux dans la série. Et on vous donnera, je ne sais pas, quelques 50 000 € pour cette coproduction. Est-ce que vous êtes d'accord qu'on y participe? Est-ce que vous nous prenez avec vous? Et est-ce que ces conditions peuvent être acceptables?
Si effectivement c'est l'argent qui parle, c'est probablement extrêmement difficile de faire ce que nous voulons faire. En revanche, si c'est pas l'argent qui parle, mais si c'est le sujet, si c'est l'écriture, si c'est quelque chose qui est apporté par un ou des auteurs au départ, et que des pays et des sociétés de production et des chaînes veulent coproduire, disons, à proportion de leurs revenus, comme ça se fait pour les films d'ailleurs. Parce que dans les films, l'argent qui est mis dans les films par les différents producteurs n'est pas forcément le même. Ça peut se faire, mais à partir d'un sujet.
Simply find a common language, or a common language had been decided for them, but they would have troubles with it. That could be turned into a lot of fun. That could be turned into a lot of dangerous misunderstanding where the murder got free because they misunderstood each other. That could be turned into a lot of fun when they should choose a restaurant to go out and eat on.
You're already rating it.
Yes, but instead of running away from the language problem, why not make it an issue?
Possibly, but the point is that we wouldn't be engaged in it unless we were already believing in the project, i.e. the writing of the project. Now, if the characters are interestingly confrontational, interestingly divorced from each other, and that's the drama of the series, then that's fine. If this is just some kind of Euro mishmash just to get lots of money from different pockets and broadcast it in lots of different places, this is going to be a disaster.
The director would like to go in the editing suite and do the editing together with the editor. Is that okay?
It is contractual in the United States that a director gets his cut before the writer-producer goes in and recuts it. And that's valuable because you get to see the director's plan for how the footage should go together. But it's very, very rare in the United States in practice that the writer-producer then does not recut the film. And you generally respect the intention of the director, but the directors know, in fact, in the United States that they're going to be recut. It's not an adversarial relationship. They understand they've only had 4 days. You're going to have a lot more time to go through the film very carefully, and they rely on the writer-producer to finish the job.
Maybe the question you should ask is the network allowed to cut as well?
Well, is it?
Is doing it? Is it? I can't answer that.
France 2 just finished a huge series on Napoleon last Monday. 4 times 90 minutes, which have not been cheap. Do anybody have the figures for the production cost and the marketing budget?
On connaît bien évidemment le coût de fabrication, qui est de l'ordre de 160 millions, je parle en francs français, de 160 millions de francs. En revanche, il n'y a pas de coût de marketing public. En revanche, il y a eu du marketing. Il y a eu des pages de publicité dans les journaux, ce qui est assez rare en France, et ce qui n'existe que ce soit les chaînes publiques ou privées que pour des événements. Les événements étant des grandes séries, des grandes mini-séries, ou parfois des reprises de séries longues. Mais il faut voir aussi qu'en France, la presse télé est extraordinairement lue.
Publicity. And I learned early on at ER that the writer-producers had a huge influence on publicity, so we do it on SVU. So we generate our own. We meet about once every 2 weeks with all of the publicity people assigned to our show from NBC and Studios USA and in-house publicists. and we strategize how we're going to publicize our show, because I have found that if you don't do it yourself, and we meet with the actors' publicists, and we found that if we do that, we generate a lot more than we would if we waited for it to come to us.
Commercials in the cinemas?
On the airlines, I've flown on United. I get really upset when I see them promoting, because United and NBC have a reciprocity for advertising TV, and they'll just give us a short blip where they'll go on and on about Crossing Jordan. Why? Because they own Crossing Jordan. So then we argue with them, and then they give us a little more time. So it's a constant looking for any kind of way to get it out. But I think that because our show is really very adult, and it does deal with some social issues, that it's worth trying to go into new arenas with it. So that's our latest kind of ploy. We have one about stem cells, and we're going to medical writers and sending our tape, and they're writing about the show as well. That happened a lot at ER, and I learned that from ER, that doctors talked a lot about our show. So we encouraged doctors to talk to us. We did a lot of interviews with medical journals, and then the word spread, and they told their colleagues. There's a lot of word of mouth is extremely strong in the United States.
My experience has been that a huge publicity campaign is a double-edged sword. If you're going to be a hit, you'll be a hit faster. If you're going to be a failure, you'll be a failure faster. Because everybody will watch that first episode, and then you will sink like a stone. The problem we had on X-Files was they wanted to merchandise it in every possible way. They wanted X-Files underwear, X-Files toothbrushes, anything X-Files, and we knew it would sell, it would make money for them, and they were the copyright holders, so we really didn't have a right to say no. All we could do was sort of promise our public disapproval if they went forward with these things, and that was a big enough threat to fend off most of the very offensive ways of capitalizing on the name. And our interest was simply in protecting the integrity of the show and the perception of the show, because if it was perceived by the public as some junky show that was willing to sell Scully underwear, then it would hurt, what we were doing.
Getting the right program into the right slot, because the wrong slot to the right program can kill it, and vice versa. With our example of today, I asked for a Sunday evening 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock drama series. I also asked for it to be young. Let's imagine that we succeeded in making it very young. That at the test audience, it came strongly out from those from between 20 and 25. Should I keep it on the 8 o'clock Sunday evening slot?
In the United States, the network decides. It doesn't matter if you're John Wells, Dick Wolf, Aaron Sorkin, they'll put it on. That's really where the network has control, complete control. They complain, but the network, if they decide, and they'll not move you if you're doing well, but if they want to put your show opposite your show on another network, they'll do that, which is what happened to a couple of producers this year.
Sensible, qui était une série qui, pour une fois, utilisait des méthodes de travail qui étaient beaucoup plus proches de ce que font les Anglais ou ce que font les Américains, et qui a été programmée par France 2 à 17h30, c'est-à-dire à une heure où manifestement le public qui aurait pu la regarder ne pouvait pas être matériellement devant sa télé. Donc à 17h30, les adolescents, les lycéens et les jeunes étudiants, ils sont dans le métro, ils sont encore en cours, etc.
Main policy of EU is that it's the distribution that is a reason, or the lack of distribution, which is the reason that we don't see each other's films and drama series. Now I'd like to ask all of you, is that correct? And if it's not a distribution problem, then you are obliged to come up with an answer of what is then the problem.
Jusqu'à il y a une dizaine d'années, le point commun entre la plupart des télévisions européennes, c'était qu'elles regardaient des programmes américains, des séries américaines, et que l'univers quotidien américain était devenu familier des publics européens. Depuis lors, chaque pays a développé des séries domestiques, comme on dit outre-Atlantique, de proximité, et effectivement chaque pays retrouve ses archétypes, retrouve ses racines, retrouve sa vie quotidienne dans ces séries nationales. En revanche, à la différence des États-Unis qui constituent un marché de dimensions comparables, mais avec malgré tout une assez grande homogénéité, personne ne retrouve ses repères aujourd'hui. Je m'amusais tout à l'heure à regarder les séries, je me disais on pourrait faire une typologie des costumes de policiers à travers l'Europe, mais on pourrait faire également une typologie des systèmes juridiques, des systèmes sociaux, des systèmes culturels, et je dois dire que personne n'y retrouve véritablement son compte.
Americans, unfortunately, are resistant to foreign filmed entertainment. But it's not my impression that the European television industries are necessarily geared toward always capturing a European-wide audience or always making commercial product. I mean, I think a lot of the things that are made are personal or an auteur's vision or designed to reach a specific national audience. And I think if the system in European television industries were designed to do what the American system does, then I have no doubt the system in Europe would succeed.
Perhaps some of your most expensive shows, which aren't nearly as expensive as ours, they have very good production values, but it's hard to compete with our kind of lousy shows that have good production values because the budgets are just so much higher. And I think, at least in the United States, people are very used to high production values, and that's one problem with European television, that they just wouldn't watch video and the like. But also because, as I said earlier on, Americans are very chauvinistic and think everything they do is the best, but I guess the French are like that too, so it's hard to get the two to watch one another's work.
If you take the EBU members, the public broadcasters, there are 71 EBU members. They have an audience, they share an audience together of 640 million Europeans. They watch an average of 3.5 hours, 365 days a year. If you add up that, that's 835 billion hours yearly spent on television. 835 billion hours spent. Besides sleeping and working, it's the consuming activity number one. So there should be room for a little European drama series there. But we don't.